Hey, my fellow light makers. Thank you once again for joining another episode of the Lighten Up Project. My name is Malcolm Grissom. I am the stand-up CEO and founder of the World Laughter Organization, and you're not. Today, on the Lighten Up Project, we are going to be talking about one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart. Human potential. Human potential. And what happens when someone looks at the subject and says, that's not enough. I'll take them all. My guest today is Jim Marshall. He's a polymath who spent over 50,000 hours studying everything from psychology to philosophy to engineering, metaphysics, and probably a few things the rest of us didn't even know were options. Today he has started a classical education, moved into engineering, and then thought, you know what? Let's figure out humans too. So he did. He went out and he became a human development engineer, and he created something called Septemics, systems designed to help people understand themselves on a whole new level. We'll get into that. It's going to be fun. So if you've ever Googled and you thought, what am I doing with my life? And you ended up more confused than you were to begin with, one thing, don't ask Google those questions. Figure it out other ways, because Google can't tell you. ChatGPT can't tell you either. But if you've done that, this episode is for you. So let's lighten up and maybe take some notes, and let's welcome Jim Marshall. Hi, Jim. How are you today?
Hi, Malcolm. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you very much for joining our community, the Lighten Up Nation. You are the next member. I love it. Hey, Jim, would you mind joining me in 20 seconds of spontaneous laughter?
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I've never done that before, but I can try.
Okay. There's always a first. There
are many things that amuse me, so maybe if I think about them.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3.
Take my wife, please.
Yes. I love that. Yes. I love him. So tell us, Jim, before we get started talking about all these wonderful things that you've been doing with your life and human development and human potential, that's really the one of the foundations of the World Laughter Organization. But before we get into all of that, tell me what is your relationship with laughter and joy?
You know, I laugh a lot, and I'm very often surprised. In other words, I'll tune into, let's say, some guy on YouTube, and he'll say something that's funny that cracks me up, and I'm surprised that I'm laughing. So for me, most of the time, it's like part of it is surprise that I wasn't expecting it. You know, like a guy's giving the news and all of a sudden goes into an impersonation of Donald Trump, which is pretty good, you know, and it makes me laugh. So I always think about it as like a pleasant surprise.
A pleasant surprise. I like that. I like that. Where in your life, besides reacting, so a lot of people think of, when they think of laughter and they think of joy, but especially laughter, they think of it as a response, as a reaction, and that's all. So in your life, where in your life, besides what you've already mentioned, the YouTube and, you know, things like that, where do you experience joy?
All kinds of places, you know. I'm a pretty lighthearted person. And also, you know, my general demeanor is one that predisposes me to laugh easily. So I like quips and jokes and things like that, and you know, interacting with people I like, you know, and sometimes they say funny things and sometimes I do, and then we all laugh, and you know, that's sort of how my life goes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, as a person, I'm a lot like George Burns. I don't know if you know George Burns.
Of course I do. I'm a comedian. What comedian does not know George Burns?
Right. So like he and I are like very similar people. I mean, I don't smoke a cigar, but other than that, we're very similar.
Yes. Yeah, but greasy.
Not at the moment, but I have.
Oh, okay.
I have in the past, yes.
Yes, George and Gracie. Hey, so you spent over 50,000 hours studying human development. What originally took you down that path?
Okay. Well, the story really starts when I was accepted into engineering school at age 16. Now, of course, I thought, as did all the other engineering students, that I was going to be engineering physical things such as airfoils and motors and electrons and such. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear that I wanted to engineer the human psyche, because that is the area of greatest mystery, of greatest unknown, and more importantly, it's the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society because people don't understand people. Don't understand the spouse, understand the child, don't understand the boss, don't understand the next door neighbor. That's the main problem that most people have now, because all these other physical things we've sort of conquered. So to make a long story short, I then had a long career as a human development engineer, where I brought engineering principles, engineering tactics, engineering devices, engineering ideas, engineering objects, engineering techniques to personal development. And I worked one-on-one with hundreds of clients of every description, and each of them improved as a result of our interaction. Basically, I was using Socratic dialogue aided by biofeedback. So when I could see that I could predict the outcome of the session, that became a regular thing. I didn't tell anybody, but I made notes. And as the years went by, it became obvious to me that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed and recorded. There is no theory of Septemics. This is all based on direct empirical observation, which is what you're going to get from an engineer. So by 1995, I had actually observed and recorded 32 scales across 32 different areas of human phenomena in my work with my clients. Interestingly, when I would go outside the session and go to the bank or Walmart or whatever, I would see exactly the same thing in people that I didn't even know. Every time the client went to the next level up, it verified my hypothesis because the clients knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing and how I was doing it. So there could not possibly be a placebo effect or any power of suggestion. Even more so in dealing with strangers. You know, I go to the bank, I'm watching two guys, and I can see this guy's at this level and this guy's at this level. They don't know who I am. They don't know that they're there, but they're there. It's just like, go back, let's say, 3,000 years on Earth. Did people know that the Earth was revolving around the sun? I don't think so. But it was. It took a long time for them to actually accept that idea. It actually took 1,800 years, if you want to know the whole history of that subject. 1,800 years for people to go from when it was first propounded until it became accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something that I just, like any scientist, I just discovered this phenomenon and wrote it down. And by 1995, I had about 32 scales, and I was pondering a difficult client one day. I was trying to assess her against a scale that I knew by then was correct from decades of usage. And I was getting nowhere. I could not find where she was on that scale until I realized this scale has a 7th level. It was a phenomenon that I had never previously seen. And there were very specific technical reasons for that I could explain if you want. But because I had never seen this phenomenon, it wasn't in the scale. But once I saw what it was, I understood the client perfectly. And I knew exactly where to fit it into the scale. And at that moment, it went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, being a whole body of data. And all of these interlocking, intersecting, interacting mathematical phenomena jumped out at me about this. Now, I have to realize I took 26 semesters of math. So when math appears, I recognize it. It's not an obscure thing to me. I saw this thing had math in it. I said, whoa, I don't know what this is, but whatever the hell it is, it has to be natural law because it has mathematics embedded in it. And anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law, like, for example, the Fibonacci sequence. So then I thought to myself, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have might also be 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way. But you have to realize I wasn't developing anything. I was just hoping my clients were making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, which is the key here, I studied all these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels, and when it did, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales, each of which had mathematics embedded in it, that each of which corresponded to a specific area of human phenomena. I said, whoa, this looks like a new subject to me. Now, some people have said to me, what book is your book like? And I have to tell them in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before. But every one of these scales, go ahead.
Jem, yeah. Before we go too far and get into the book, let's back up for a moment.
Okay.
So our listeners can catch up. And for some of our listeners, explain to us. So you're using scales. Explain to us what a scale is, please.
Well, it comes from the Roman word scala, which means ladder. It's a ladder. So if you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a specific order, that's a scale. I mean, science is full of these things. There are all kinds of scales out there.
And how so specifically when we're talking about human development and the scales, how are the two connected? So what does it look like? So explain to us Like if you were explaining to a 14-year-old the scale and human development and how it's connected and what the scale in terms of human development looks like, how would you explain it?
Well, the first thing I should say to sort of give a context to this is that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I crafted a workable philosophic system called Septemics, published in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. So, most people in the subject of humanity or humans or interactions don't have a clue. And I'll give you an analogy for that. I've been into gardening since I was a small boy. So you might say, really, why don't you come over and look at my garden? I said, okay. So I show up at Malcolm's house and I go in the backyard and I say, oh, Malcolm has hydrangeas, irises, tulips, begonias, forget-me-nots, or anything else that you have, lily of the valley. Now, the reason I can analyze it that way is I know a lot about flowers. If you bring some 5-year-old kid into your garden, he will see and smell exactly what I saw and smell. But all he can say is, these are pretty and they smell nice. That's all he knows. Now, most adults are like that little kid regarding people. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't have a clue. And that is why, in the United States, more than 50% of marriages end in divorce. Clearly, those two people did not know what they were looking at. Because if they did, they either would not have gotten married, or they would have gotten married and lived happily ever after. And this is a big, big problem that everybody has. So let's say you have a guy, and Friday night comes, he says, I want to go out and meet a young lady. He puts on his best suit. He goes to a nice bar. He meets a congenial young lady. He buys her a drink. They're talking, right? And after a few minutes, he thinks to himself, boy, she's pretty and she smells nice. That's the same thing the little kid just said about your garden. This guy doesn't know anything about this woman. He gets her number, and God help him, he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. I mean, he might be lucky, but he also might be unlucky. Now, if he knew these scales, he would be able to spot her on some of these scales for better or worse. He might be able to say, oh, I can see she's a level 3 on the scale of basic purposes. And that would really, really help him understand her well. And she would be surprised at how well he was understood. She was understood by him.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So now where on these scales, not where on these scales, but I should say, how does laughter and joy interact with this, and how does it come into play, and where does it fit in everything that you're talking about right now?
Laughter and joy is what you get when you use this material. Okay. This material, I know for a fact, for very specific technical reasons, undercuts depression and anxiety. So when you get rid of depression and anxiety, what's left? Laughter. So when I was a young man, obviously this material didn't exist. I hadn't discovered it yet. And so I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes, right? So I had a lot of times of the opposite of laughter and joy, right? A lot of heartache and regret and stuff like that we all sort of have. Now, for me, that absolutely cannot, does not, will not happen. So it's mostly laughter and joy. Because when I see some guy who is at or near the bottom of a certain scale, I know we're done. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye. See? And the opposite is also true. I see somebody who's very high in the scale. I say, oh, this is an upscale person. And I cultivate that relationship, you see? And what do you get from that? Laughter and joy. So in my life, there is no drama. None. I don't get upset. I don't get worried. I don't get angry. Now, of course, if something physical happens to me, like I stub my toe, well, I'm not too happy for the next 10 seconds, But other than that, in what we're talking about, laughter and joy, interaction, it's very positive because I'm able to get the people out of my life who are at or near the bottom of the scales because I can see it. And I'll tell you a true story. About a year ago, I met a gorgeous blonde. I'm a single guy. We were very interested in one another. So now we're going through the usual getting to know you stuff. What kind of restaurants do you like? What days do you off? There's a lot of that in the beginning, right? So we had a half a dozen or so conversations like that. So we're having this conversation. I noticed, she's low on this scale. Okay. Now we're having another conversation. She's low on this other scale. Okay. We're having another conversation. I noticed she's low on another scale. So wait a minute. I barely know this woman, and I have already determined that she is at or near the bottom of 3 scales. And what that means to me, and this is not a speculation, this is simply a projection. What that means to me is, if I were to analyze her across all of these scales, she's probably going to be at or near the bottom of 10 or 12 or 15 or 18 scales. You see, that is not somebody I'm going to get involved with. Mm-hmm. So I can see this. Now, I have to tell you, there was nothing negative between us. We didn't have an argument. We didn't have a fight. We didn't have a disagreement. It was extremely congenial, pleasant, all smiles and laughter, right? But I could see that this was somebody who was going to be a lot of trouble to me. This person was going to be a major source of aggravation because she's at or near the bottom of these scales. And the people who cause all the trouble are the people who are at or near the bottom of the scales. So I just went to her the next time. I said, you're a very nice person, but pass. She was shocked. You know why she was shocked? I was probably the first guy that ever did that to her. Because she was so beautiful and glamorous, every other guy would have jumped right in. But I knew better. I knew that this person was going to be a problem for me because I could see where she was on some of these scales. And I just let it go. Bye. No regret. Didn't think about her again. So think about this. Think about all the aggravation I've saved myself. Think about all the money I saved myself. Think about all the time I saved, right? All the $100 dinners on a Saturday night when I could have been going out with somebody else who was actually going to be a part of my life. So I streamlined my life very well there. See, I was able to make that calculation with certainty that this is not going to work. In other words, I didn't have to get run over by a train before I figured this out. I could figure it out intellectually by looking at it. And so this is how my life goes. I see certain people, and I see that they're upscale people, and I surround myself with those people. And what do you think happens between us? Laughter and joy. It's very easy to cultivate. And I'll tell you something else. Most people are high on some scales and low on other scales. Fewer than 1% of all humans are at or near the top of all the scales. So you can just forget that. So when you meet a person, this person is going to have high scales and low scales. But once I know what it is, it's not a problem because I can just tiptoe around it. So when that person goes into this behavior that's kind of a downscale behavior, I say, oh, all right, she's doing that thing again. I just don't make a thing about it. I tiptoe. And so I'm able to preserve the relationship and benefit from the 12 or 15 or 18 upscale things about the person. And that is how my life goes. I find people who are at a high level in that context, and that's who I stay with. So, for example, the guy who works on my car is at least an expert in auto mechanics. He works on $1 million cars, okay? As far as I can tell, and I know a lot about cars, this guy knows everything there is to know about cars. I bring my car radio, listens to it, and said, okay, pick it up tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Put it up, write him a check, we're done. Think about all the aggravation that saved you. I'm not going around saying, gee, what if this guy is honest? What if this guy knows what he's talking about? Can you recommend? I know this guy is high on that scale. Now, I don't know where he is on all these other scales. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me if he's high in the scale of literacy. It doesn't matter to me if he's high on the scale of permeation. That's not relevant. What's relevant is this guy can fix my car correctly, inexpensively, the first time he gets it right. That's what I want. That's my whole life now. So everything, I just find somebody who's at that, high on that place on the scale. So, for example, I have somebody I know who has a wonderful sense of humor. We kid around all the time, This person is what I would call a political extremist, and, kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum from me. I just don't let it be a factor. And we can still enjoy one another. And that's how my whole life is, So, I've kind of have a life that, I don't have a lot of grimacing. There's no regret. I don't make stupid mistakes. I know what I'm dealing with because I know this material.
I love this. This is great. So tell us, what is one pattern that you've noticed in individuals that repeats, and that it repeats over and over again, and it's something that holds them back. They're low on, I'm sure it would affect more than one skill.
I got a good example. I mentioned a single guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I meet a lot of women. Some of them are spectacular. Okay. But then I have to see, where are they on the scale of sexuality? Level 5 on the scale of sexuality is literally cannot have sex. There are people who cannot have sex. That's where they are in that scale. So this has happened to me many times. I meet somebody, I'm really interested in this person, like one another, we laugh together, we're good for. But I am able to figure out, I see. Now I know why this person is single. She can't have sex. So she's not going to have it with me or anybody else. So that's the end of that. So, it's not a mystery. It's not a problem. I just let it go. Okay, fine. That's where that person is at. And, I'm not going to keep banging my head against a brick wall, because that's where that person is at. It's just like a chrysanthemum and a rose. They're different. If you want flowers to make a nice smell in your house, roses are the item, not chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums don't have much of a smell. You see? So I'm the same way with people. This lady is a chrysanthemum and this lady is a rose. See? And I can sort of navigate that very easily and smoothly. And it saves me a lot of wasted time and irritation and foolishness.
Sure. So what is one step that someone could take if they want to begin this meaningful personal growth?
I invite your viewers to my website, which is Septemics.com, Septemics, where they could see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. They can read sections of the book itself. And there's even a pre-recorded audio called Introduction to Septemics that they could listen to that explains it to a new person in 15 minutes. I invite them to do it. If you do that, you're probably going to want to buy this book because it's available hardbound, softbound, and ebook. If you get the ebook, it's very cheap. You can have it in a minute or two, and you can change your whole life. Because
Wow.
people have been telling me for 30 years, wow, this changed my whole life. That's what they tell me. So this is a life-changing book. So it's very easy to access. It's not expensive. If you can read English reasonably well and you want to improve yourself or others or both, this is for you.
Okay. So let's give people a little more motivation to go check that out. So in terms of systematic thinking, how does understanding systems help people to make better decisions in their lives?
Well, understanding systems could be many different things. Understanding Septemics is something very specific, and that absolutely helps people make better decisions in their lives, because it gets rid of the problem that everyone has, which is understanding people. That's the problem that most people have. And if you just look around the world, you see that. Like, I'm sure you are aware of what went on in Minneapolis a couple of months ago, right? A lot of bad stuff, rioting and everything else, right? You know why that happened? Those two groups of people don't understand one another. If they understood one another, they would be fine. They would be laughing. That's why things are very easy for me, because I understand people. And so I can have a very lighthearted, clear way of dealing with it. So it's not upsetting to me. On the other hand, it's amusing and pleasant, because I understand this material. So let me tell you how this is generally beneficial without getting into specifics. Each of these 35 skills provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or the beneficialness of any individual group or activity. If that individual group or activity moves persons up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So I am giving you a yardstick by which to measure human affairs, which is an entirely new thing. More importantly, when you find either yourself or another person at any level, in other words, you say, this guy is at this level, you have what you could call an insight or a realization. That is one of the ways that you know you found the right level. So, for example, you say, gee, I wonder where my mother is on the scale of basic purposes. So you know her well, you study, I see. And you will have all the, that's why when I was 3 years old, she said that. And that's why when I was 17, she did this to me. You'll have all these realizations. Now, your relationship with her just improved because you understand her much better. And I can absolutely guarantee you, pick any person on earth. If you could find that person's level on every scale, you would understand that person better than he understands himself. Because this is precise, accurate, and specific. It's not vague. It's natural law. It's just like the difference between a cat and a dog. I'm sure you know cats and dogs are different. Lots of people have cats, lots of people have dogs. Some people like cats, some people don't like dogs. I like them both. You know why I like them both? I see what they are. Cat is a certain type of creature. You have to treat him a certain way. A dog is very different. If you treat a cat the way you would treat a dog, that cat will not like you. You can't put a collar and a leash on a cat and say, let's go for a walk, Rolf. Cat's not going to go along with that. That's not how cats are. You see, people are the same way. Is this guy a cat or is this guy a dog? Say to these all the time. They look at this, this guy's a dog. Okay, good. Let's put a leash on and go for a walk. So in other words, it becomes very easy to develop an appropriate relationship. Well, what happens when you develop an appropriate relationship? Laughter and joy. It also enables you to stay away from the people who are going to wreck your life. I am telling you, if you find somebody who is at or near the bottom of a bunch of these scales, run for your life, because that person is going to cause you a lot of trouble. Take the scale of basic purposes. Adolf Hitler was at level 7, the bottom of the scale of basic purposes. His purpose was to destroy. Now, a lot of people are going to say, gee, why would somebody have that for a basic purpose? Well, fortunately, there aren't too many of these people. What we do know is stay away from that person. So this saves you a lot of trouble, and it also opens up a lot of positivity to you to be around people you really like.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say I go to a certain place of business, right? There's like 8 or 10 people there. I can see that this one person is at or near the bottom of a bunch of scales. Okay, I'm a little careful. I stay away from the person. And then I see this, this is a very upscale person. Well, the upscale person is the one I converse with. I make jokes with. I start a conversation. How's your husband? What's going on? I like your jewelry. What do you get for it? Laughter and joy. And meanwhile, this other person who is at or near the bottom of the scales, you're not going to get any joy from that person. See, you're going to get something like that. So you don't deal with that person. I can tell you many times, I've gone to a government agency with paperwork, handed in my paperwork, and the person said something like, I can't accept this. And they give you some reason. I already know I did everything, crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. This is a downscale person. This person is not going to accept my paperwork. I say, fine, I leave. I come back at another time, I go to a different person and give him the same paperwork, goes right through. What was the difference? The difference was the first one was a downscale person, the second one was an upscale person. Now, when you have these data that are in this book, you can spot that with precision. And so this is a guy I'm going to vote for, and this is a guy I'm not going to vote for.
Now, you just gave us a moment of humor that could have helped one of our listeners or more than one of our listeners get it all of a sudden by talking about cats and dogs. Is there have you seen other moments like that where humor helps someone get it?
Well, let me put it this way. Humor, laughter, joy are effects rather than causes. So the material that I'm giving you is a cause, not an effect. So it will result in that sort of a positive exchange in your life. So, you can't really come into somebody with laughter with a crowbar and pry it into him, It's like it's something that if the relationship is there, will occur, and you hope it will. And I hope to cultivate laughter and joy with everybody I deal with. My son once said to me, he would see me with taxi drivers and people who worked in stores. Why do you talk to people? I said, I like people. I'll strike up a conversation with a guy. Like, let's say I got an Uber driver, right? And he's wearing a LA Dodgers hat. I say, are you a Dodgers fan? He says, yeah. How about you? I say, no, I'm a Yankee fan. Oh, well, see, and that's it. We're in 3 minutes later, we're laughing, we're having fun, we have an interaction, you see? I cultivate it. Now, if I had a guy who was wearing a hat with a swastika on it, I'm not going to talk to that guy. Okay? He's a Nazi. I'm just going to say, okay, here's your money. Thank you. Goodbye. So what you get from these scales is you get to know who are the nice guys and who are not the nice guys. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but it's against 35 different axes. But I want to finish telling you something I started before, which I didn't quite finish.
Yes, please.
Remember I said, when you spot the level, you have an insight. You're having trouble getting along with Mary Lou. And so you say, let's see, where's Mary Lou on the scale? Oh, I see where she is, for better or worse. That could be, oh, she's at the bottom of the scale. No wonder we're not getting along. I'm going to drop this. Or it could be, oh, yeah, she's pretty high on the scale. That's very nice. See? Either way. Now, you have an insight. Once you know the actual level of any person, whether it's yourself or another, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. This is more significant than it might seem at first, because I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. And let me tell you what I mean by that. We all have problems, situations, dilemmas, difficulties that we can't resolve. More than 99% of the time, it's because we don't know the gradient. That's why you hire an expert. See, I've worked as a trainer. A guy comes to me, says, Jim, I'm 100 pounds overweight. I haven't been able to deal with this. Will you train me? Yes. Okay. Now, I have to find the gradient for this guy. I'm not going to just give him a 100-pound barbell and tell him to lift it or tell him to go run 5 miles a day. That's malpractice. I would say, talk to him a little bit, try to make a guess. So I'm going to guess this guy can curl 15 pounds. Right? So I give him the 15-pound dumbbell, and I say, okay, let's see how many of these you can do. Right? So he starts doing it, and he says, this is easy. I could do this all day. Fine, stop. Then I give him a 20. I do with this. This is a little hefty. I could do, maybe I might be able to do 15 of these, Stop. So I want you to do 13 of these on each arm 3 times a day. And next week we will discuss it. A week later, I come back and I say, how did you do with your curls? And if he says, this is killing me, this is murder, my muscles are all, I say, fine, just keep doing it. If he says, this is quite easy, I could do 25 reps, I say, fine, let's go to a higher weight. That's finding the gradient. That is what an expert does. Every good teacher, coach, facilitator in the world, therapist in the world understands that human development must be done on a gradient. You cannot make a couch potato into an Olympic athlete because there are too many intervening levels. You have to take the person where he is and move him up to the next level. That is what I did with my clients for 40 years. That is how I discovered this material. I didn't know these scales were there, but because of the nature of my work, I could do it. And I'll tell you another reason why I discovered this before anybody else. Let's say a guy has trouble with women, right? So he goes to a therapist. He goes into therapy. He says, Doc, I'm not getting anywhere with women. And he sees this nice psychologist for an hour a day for a year. And at the end of the year, he says, Doc, I'm doing much better now. I think I can handle this. Right? That's successful. That's what we expect. I could do that in 30 minutes with my human development engineer because of the biofeedback. 30 minutes. The guy comes in with 30 minutes. Okay, so, oh, now I see why I'm not getting along with women. It's because of this, and this. And that explains why. He's happy. See, we're done with that subject. Now, what the difference there is, I could see the flower blossom. I could see this guy going from can't get along with women to can get along with women in 30 minutes. And so I saw the whole phenomenon in front of me. The therapist doesn't see that because it takes a year. That's why I figured this out. I would see, oh, this guy was here. Now he's here. That must be the next level up on that scale. And I write it down, see? Then another guy comes into me who doesn't know this other guy. And I see he's at the same level. And we work, and he goes up to that exact same level. That verifies it. Okay. That tells me this is a scale.
Yeah.
So you see, I was just moving people up the scale. And every time the guy goes to a high level, boy, is he happy. He says, thank you, Jim. I feel much better about this now. Okay, very good. I'll see you next week.
Yeah. I definitely know what you're saying, and this is great. This is you're talking about something that we can do to streamline the streamline the way that we look at human development and potential, and which you say, and it definitely integrates with laughter and joy, which I love. I mean, this is such a fascinating conversation that we're having. But alas, it can't go on forever and ever. So, once again, I know that you've said it before, and all the information is in our show notes. But once again, I would like to invite you to verbalize how people can continue this conversation with you to learn more about Septemics and what you do.
Okay. So Septemics.com. Everybody tells me it's a very good site. People go to the site and they say, oh, I see what this guy's doing. If you go through the site, you're probably going to want to buy the book because ebooks are cheap. Now, let me tell you something I already know. From 30 years of observing, people get this. Guys only goes into a bookstore. He sees a book on the shelf. It says Septemics. He says, what the hell is this? He takes it down. He opens it up. Doesn't matter what chapter he opens it up to. He's going to look at it and he's going to say something like, oh, this makes sense. You know why he's saying that? It's natural law. Anything that's natural law is intuitive. It's not counterintuitive. If you study Newton's 3 laws of motion, they are very intuitive. Okay? And all of science is full of that. And the more you study it, the more intuitive it becomes. I mean, if you look at the periodic table of elements, every one of these 35 scales has its own periodic table. You look at it, it breaks the whole thing down. And not only does it give you the 7 levels, but you understand why these levels are that way, why they're in that order. What are we measuring with this scale? This is very detailed and very specific, and I know axiomatically that the scales are correct. Now, somebody might argue about what words I used, and that's a legitimate argument because writing is an art. But I have to tell you, I spent thousands of hours carefully crafting this in a way that makes sense to people. I get it. Now, when people first see it, they say, oh, this makes sense. Then they start getting into it. And then at some point they go, whoa, this is big. This will
Wow. What? Yes, this is big. You've got me very excited to go to Septemics to find out all about this because this sounds wonderful. This sounds like something that could change the course of my coaching and change the course of other people's coaching.
Yes.
And so, yes, I'm very excited. So I'm definitely going to go there. I'm definitely going to suggest that all the listeners don't walk to your computer. If you're listening to this on a podcast, run to your computer and look up this website because this is fascinating stuff. Jim, let us boil this down to what is one thing. I know you've given us so much to think about, but what is one thing that you would like to leave our listeners with after this episode ends?
Okay. The data in this book are vital for every person. I can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. All those things that you couldn't figure out. Why didn't Gertrude like me? Why did my mother treat me that way? Why did I flunk? All of those things will get resolved if you use this material. And you'll understand them, and then you won't think about them anymore. This guy's been thinking about Gertrude for 18 years because they broke up when they were in high school. Now he says, I see why. He doesn't think about it anymore. I mean, he can remember her, but he's not going around saying, why didn't Gertrude like me? Why didn't Gertrude like, you know? Mm-hmm. Or the guy who says, she loves me not. She loves me. You don't need that, you know? You just look at this, tells you, here's why she loves you. She's high in the scale, and so are you. There you go.
I love it. Definitely. Jim, one more question. Finish this sentence for me, please. Healing doesn't have to be heavy because
it comes from within yourself.
Love it. So, yes, I can't wait to go onto your website and investigate all this. This is yummy stuff. This really is. So thank you very much, Jim, for coming on the show, for giving us this slice, because this was only a slice of the brilliance that you have. Thank you very much. And listeners, thank you very much for listening. I really and truly hope that you got as much out of this as I did. And please keep coming back, because this is how we make the Lighten Up Nation stronger. The Lighten Up Nation this is our global, and the word just left. This is our global mission to spread laughter and joy and humor and play around the world, and to help us navigate things like personal development and healing, and this is what you do, Jim. You do the same thing. We just come at it from different standpoints, and I love it. It's so interesting. So please, listeners, please keep coming back, keep supporting us, tell your friends that you liked it, and most importantly, please remember that every smile can open a door, every laugh can open a heart, and every step can be your next victory. Until next time, I've been Malcolm Grissom, and this has been Jim Marshall on the Lighten Up Project. Thanks a lot. Stressed out, stuck, or leading on autopilot? It's not a motivational problem, it's a connection problem. My weekly virtual improv classes boost engagement, collaboration, and retention, all while having fun. Register now for a complimentary month